All right. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the new flavor. I hope that everybody can hear us. It should be fine. With a little bit of introduction, welcome to my guest, Seb. Seb, how's it going?
Hi, name's Seb. Going well.
So yeah, I know that the channel is predominantly a Pokemon channel, and I've received some flack from a lot of the long-term subscribers about me venturing into Magic, but let's not close ourselves into a box and be open-minded about other TCGs. I think that it's only fair. So why don't we start things off by you telling people a little bit about yourself?
So I'm a second-year medical student at the University of Cape Town. I did a Bachelor of Science before this. Card game-wise, played a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh! When I was younger before it got very degenerate. Then played some Hearthstone, that was great. And then started playing Magic late 2018 kind of vibe. I mean, playing pretty, consecutively since then. So a lot of Magic since 2018.
So 2018, you didn't play any Magic before 2018?
No Magic before 2018. I didn't even know it existed. I wasn't one of those like long time watchers, no players. I found out about it and started playing.
I'm legit shocked. I thought that you were playing Magic for a lot longer.
No. So I feel like I did like a real deep dive into Magic. I've still only really considered myself a Commander player, but I try and keep up to date about a bunch of other formats, what's good, what's bad, what's interesting, what's power crept. So watch a lot of Legacy, a lot of Vintage, love Vintage Cube, a bit of 1v1 Commander, Pauper, Modern. It's a vibe.
I was actually about to say that last night on the EGG pod, they were talking about they played a Power 9 cube at Top Deck. That's like insane. Like, imagine what a cube like that costs, right? Like,
yeah, it's insane.
And
money.
no proxies, eh? Like they said, like no proxies.
Somebody actually owned a Black Lotus,
the owner of Top Deck.
Wow.
That's his cube, yeah.
That's
nuts. I see Vish saying in the chat, please don't tell me he wants to be a cardiac surgeon. Head on.
Ideas of surgery at the moment are so beyond me. I'm second year, so it's got a long way to go. Yeah.
Yeah, Vish is a long-time patron and he's a doctor.
Okay. So, what's up, Dr. Vish?
He helped me through COVID. But you're back to the topic. Yeah, so I mean, I'm also a Commander player, as you're aware, and I'm also dabbling a little bit into into some Pauper now. So I've been playing Magic longer than you.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
So I played Magic. I first started playing Magic around like Saviors of Kamigawa.
Wow,
right?
Okay, that's ages before
Right,
me.
so Saviors, okay? And then, like, that was just like casual Magic, like a friend gives you a deck kind of vibe.
Mhm.
Like, I still like have like PTSD from some of the decks at the time because it was like Mirrodin, Kamigawa.
Yep, so all affinity.
Yeah, so Broodstar, Cloud
Yep.
Posts, like
Yeah.
I have it in my head. Anyway, and then so took a long break. A buddy of mine and I played Pokemon for a while. We stopped playing Pokemon, we played Magic, and that was around Time Spiral, Cold Snap.
Okay.
Like we came back in then for a little bit, and then I played competitively around Shards of Alara, like Shadowmoor. Like I remember I played in Nationals, and I was one spot away from making it like qualifying. I was playing Jan Sack. I will never forget because it was like with like the Thronaxes and Broodmate Dragons. Like
Okay.
I remember like it was when Lakshak was still at the Rondebosch Chess Club. Like
I can't believe Thronax was competitively viable.
well, at that time the mechanics had changed, right? It was like you could block and stack and still do damage
Oh,
on the
okay, you
block.
still had damage on the stack. Okay.
Yeah, so
Makes no
like
difference.
that was a huge
Okay.
difference. Let's see what's going on in the chat here for a second. Like, how was the Pauper event on Friday? I also missed it, Circuit Chaser, unfortunately. Stefan, look, you knew that this was going to be a Magic chat, and yet here you are calling blasphemy. So Brendan's also on my case. We're going to get a lot of blasphemy stuff in the chat. I'll put that up there right now. There's going to be a lot of blasphemy stuff. So, Commander, let's just focus on that. So Commander is actually what brought me back into Magic, because Pokemon doesn't have anything like that.
There's no multiplayer real
like
doors for 4-player.
Yeah. So 4-player stuff. And so Pokemon actually does have an adaptation to Commander now.
Okay.
Where, it's actually more like Brawl. So it's a 60-card singleton format.
Okay.
Where all the cards in the deck have to be the same type. So very Commander-esque. You can also play cards that are out of standard.
Okay.
So, and then nerfed it down a bit. So it's also community-driven. The rules are not set by Pokemon.
Okay.
Very cool. I love it. Like, I'm playing it a little bit. It's obviously, I've gravitated towards it because of the fact that I play Commander. But the 4-player stuff there's no 4-player GLC, please. So we'll get to that in a second, Vish. So, Commander is very unique in the sense that it's 4 players. But, I don't know if maybe it's better coming from you, like if you want to give people a rundown of what Commander actually is.
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, Commander was designed by judges who were tired of seeing sort of the standard and modern cards. They wanted to play their bulk rares, their bulk mythics, the big Timmy stuff being like large mana value stuff, right? This is stuff you only get to play maybe late game. They didn't want it to be too competitive, so they came up with this variant. So it's multiplayer, it's free for all, so you can attack anybody, you can deal with anybody's stuff. It's called EDH. It used to be called EDH, I suppose. Still kind of is called EDH. I'll get on that maybe later. Elder Dragon Highlander. So initially, you could only play one of the Elder Dragons as your commander at the front face.
What?
And that's where the 21 damage comes from. So there's a rule in Commander which is if you deal 21 damage, you immediately die. So if you deal 21 damage from a single commander, you die. And that's because all the Elder Dragons have 7 power.
7, yeah.
So
3 hits.
3 hits and you're dead.
That makes a lot of sense.
And so they kept that rule over. And then, eventually, I suppose, Wizard of the Coast caught on and they thought this was a good format, maybe start endorsing. And so when they did it, they sort of rebranded it as Commander. So now we know it as Commander, but a lot of people still call it EDH. Popular channels are still called, like EDH Rec is still EDH Rec.
Yeah.
So... yeah,
it's I didn't actually know about the Elder Dragon story.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
And the Highlander is from There Can Only Be One, the reference to
like
Highlander.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So the idea for the Pokemon players asking what Commander is, the idea is that you have one card that sits outside of the deck, and the card can be multiple colors. So in this instance, let's call it green and red. So therefore, every card in your deck has to be green and red or no color.
Yeah.
So it all has to be in line with the commander, and it's 100 card singleton. So you can only have one copy of every card unless stated otherwise, and basic lands are as many as you like. So that's just the basics of, like, if you're really trying to dumb it down, it's about having 100 cards, and you have a card that you can put in the game whenever you want.
And I suppose in your version of Pokemon, you're doing as many basic energies as you want, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we have the basic lands to do the same thing.
So what stops one chap just being bullied if it's 1v1 with 4 people playing? Well, yes, like, of course we'll get to that, but I'll touch on your comment right now that there's a term for that in Commander, and they call it the arch enemy.
Yeah.
So basically, if you're playing 4 players, as you can imagine, the format is considered to be a little bit political, like a lot political if you are some people, and you try and politic around the table. And what I love about it is that it's done in the open. So like Seb can be running away, and then I'll speak to player 2 and player 3 and be like, hey guys, listen, he is like running away here. We got to do something about him. So then he'll get branded unofficially as the arch enemy, and everybody's going to try and take him off the table, or at least bring him down.
Cut it down a few levels so that everyone's more close to even.
Yes. So nothing stops people from bullying. Another thing that we see often if you're playing multiple Commander games in one night, you'll see stuff like, we'll play a game and Seb completely like bum rushes the table, and then the next game everybody starts chasing after Seb because he won the previous game. So like nothing stops it from happening. Of course, it's not really what the game is all about. It's about having it's supposed to be fun, it's supposed to be casual. Like, I really love decks that go out of their way to get to a win. If it's like the more obscure, the better.
For sure.
I appreciate people who can build decks like that. I find it incredible.
I think Commander's really special in the way that, So in Magic, usually we have formats, so we constrict the number of cards you can play by saying like X time limits, right? Pokemon is the same. So we have Standard, which is like the new cards, Modern, which is like, I don't know, cards from, I think, post-Mirrodin sort of vibes, Legacy, which is basically everything minus a few very expensive cards, and then Vintage, which is just everything. And Commander was like, we will play with essentially the Vintage card pool, but because it's singleton, and because it's for fun, the politics and the four-player aspect kind of means that that's what balances it out.
Yeah.
So instead of having to ban everything that's gross, the idea is it's for fun. So you talk to your group and you say, hey, I can't really, you know, be playing at this level, or I can't be playing these really expensive cards. I'd like to play maybe with more slow games. Can we try? And because decks are singleton and mostly made of bulk cards, or they used to be, you can make a commander deck for fairly cheap. And most people have more than one commander deck. And so that you get to shuffle about, change decks up between games, and talk to your play group and have a lot of fun at the same time. Because although you're all there to win, you didn't build your decks as strong as they necessarily could be most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's CDH.
Yeah.
I'll get to that in a moment. But somebody said here that Vish said that it's like the tabletop version of Civilizations. I mean, yeah, in a way, I see where you're going with that comment. Definitely. There's politicking involved. I think there's a game called... It's not called Risk. It's called... It's literally a board game and it's all about politicking.
I mean, there is Risk, but like Risk is the game that destroys family.
Yeah.
Like...
Well, no, Monopoly's the game that destroys
they both
family.
do. It's fair.
Risk is pretty... People can get pretty salty.
Okay.
But there is... I can't get to the name now, but there are games where it's literally... The whole game is literally about politicking. Welcome to the chat, Conscript. Thank you very much for joining. Yeah, the idea, like, to reel it all in, Commander is a community-driven, casual format, and the whole idea behind it is to, you know, just have fun without having that kill-all competitive vibe.
It's really about the rule zero conversation, which is what we talk about in EDH, which is the idea that, like, because the format has so many cards, and because no one can really test everything, and because it's not sort of ruled or governed by the people who own Magic, Wizards of the Coast. It's instead governed by a bunch of judges, and now officially some additional, I suppose, what would you call them, content creators and players.
Mm-hmm.
The format's a lot more about having fun, enjoying yourself, and yeah, it has a real different aspect to it as well, because we rule, as you talk about like the Commander identity, and so there's a lot of flavor in Commander as well. So we spoke about earlier about how maybe you want to have like the most explosive, big, fun win. A lot of the time it's not even about winning or even pulling off a sick combo. It's more about the assembly of cards you put together. Like, what is the deck consisting of? So you've maybe put it on theme. You're playing all tribal. That's like pretty simple, right? You're playing all elves, all goblins. But I've seen people put like decks together that are themed on other things, like themed on your favorite anime. Like maybe it's a all Dragon Ball deck, or maybe it's a all Naruto deck, or an all One Piece deck, things like that. Or I've seen people put together decks like they impose like their own self-restrictions, whether those be budget or even art. I mean, one of the most famous examples that went around for a while was people constructed a deck of people sitting in chairs. So every card in the deck was someone was sitting in a chair, or there was a chair. Yeah, and there's a lot of those in Magic that you can reasonably make a commander deck.
I think I saw I tried to do the same thing with the Angel Tribal.
Yeah.
Like even had spells having the word angel in it, or enchantments like angelic something.
For sure.
I saw somebody do like, there was a bear tribal, and then like the word bear, like it just had to have the word bear as well.
I think there's 4 bearers blades that was in there.
Yeah, like it's a bunch of bear stuff. Like it's crazy. Vicious saying, does MTG get violent? I see a foot in a brace.
It's not just cut the foot. No, the foot is from a sports related injury. It's a broken fibula, so that's the boot's on for a little while.
Just You healing nicely.
Yeah, that's fine.
I see Circuit Chaser said touch on Rule 0. I think Rule 0 is probably the part of Commander, in my opinion, that makes it Commander, right?
It's also the most complicated.
So Rule 0 is a discussion that you have before the game, that you try and identify what everybody else is playing at the table, not specifically, but like where their power level is at.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't really want to use the word power level, but I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, how strong is your deck?
There's other more maybe like intricate parts about Rule Zero. So I spoke about maybe how you can't really balance the format because you can't test this many cards, and the people who authorize and sort of they control the ban list of the format, they don't want to ban too many cards either. So what they've suggested is that you talk to your group, and what the community has sort of rallied around is the idea of Rule Zero. So it's Rule Zero because it's an unofficial rule, and it also happens sometimes people call it Turn Zero, and that's because you take it before you start the game. So before you play Turn 1, you maybe have a discussion not just about how strong your decks are, like how quickly they'll win, or the expense of your decks, but maybe also like what do you want to get out of this game. Like, now obviously if you're with a bunch of enfranchised players and you guys all know each other maybe, then you don't really have that conversation. I've had lots of times when I sit down with my friends, we don't really have a Rule Zero because we just know each other. But if I'm going to a new place, meeting new people, or people have new things they want to try out, then I think it's really important that you lay down some ground rules and you lay down some expectations of what you want from this game. Because again, there's not usually prizes, there's not usually the claim of like victory. It's more about having something fun and enjoyable. Because if you wanted to win, you could go play a bunch of 1v1 formats, and you wanted prizes, you can do that too.
Yeah.
But if you want to engage with friends and have some fun, Command is the way to go.
I think Circuit Chaser made a good comment there saying no combos, no tutors, all decks are 7. So and no
I see
blue,
no blue there as well.
It's
Someone's been scarred.
The idea for those. Oh, by the way, somebody just followed. Smarted67. Thank you for following. The idea is like the tutors is a big thing in Commander. I rate when we talking about power levels. Tutors for Pokemon players are cards that search for anything in particular, or sometimes anything at all, really.
Should we maybe go over a little bit of like basics of Magic? Because I know we jumped like straight in. I don't know how many of your viewers know.
Yeah,
like,
I don't
basics.
think people know any of the basics, but yeah, maybe we can.
Maybe a little crash course.
How about we crash course on like I can try and compare things to Pokemon.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so Kyle introduced me to a little bit of Pokemon, so I played like a couple games with my niece, very very sweet. I noticed a few things. So one, you guys play 1 energy per turn.
Yeah, Magic.
We play 1 land per turn.
But there are cards that allow you to play as like extra energies, and there are cards that allow you to play extra mana.
Lands. Yep.
So
we have mana sources that aren't lands. So we have creatures that can make you mana. We have other things that can make you mana. We call artifacts sometimes, or even enchantments, right?
And Pokemon does not have that.
Okay.
Okay. So let's just try and break this thing right down to the bare bones. Pokemon, you start the turn by drawing a card. Magic, you start the turn by drawing a card. You draw 1 card per turn. Magic, you have a maximum hand size.
Yeah,
7
cards.
Pokemon, you have no maximum hand size.
That's gross.
Okay, so built-in Reliquary Tower, Thought Vessel,
okay,
forever. Okay, the biggest thing that we did mention on last night's podcast was that the big difference between Pokemon and Magic is Pokemon has got no interaction in your opponent's turn.
Nothing.
No interaction.
You put your hand down.
No stack.
You say goodbye.
You put your hand down. So in some ways it's easier.
Okay.
In the sense that you don't like there isn't like a sequence of events that's going to determine whether something happens or not.
Okay.
But in also some ways, Pokemon might be a little bit more difficult because you need to preemptively assume what your opponent's going to do and try and play a turn or 2 ahead.
Yeah, I would say one of the complicated things about Magic is you're always playing. You're never like hands down. You always got cards in your hand.
Unless you're a red player.
And unless you're a red player who likes to tap out. Tap out just refers to just using all your mana sources in a turn, just calling it like I'm gonna do everything I'm gonna do, and then I'm gonna let you have a go.
I mean, sure. So it's yes. So there's no interaction.
Okay.
I think that's the one big thing.
We very rarely tutor. In Magic, like, we don't tutor that much. There's an exception. We tutor for lands sometimes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, like, we search for, like, a very particular, like, land, or, like, maybe not particular, but a very constricted land. So it'll be, like, there's 5 colors in Magic. Each of them get a basic land, like an energy, and a card will often say like, go find an island or a mountain, or a basic island or mountain, and we do that a lot. But otherwise, tutoring, you don't do it that much.
Pokemon, I don't think tutoring for energies is that big of a thing.
Okay.
Tutoring for Pokemon is massive.
Okay.
Like every deck plays 8 to 12 copies of Pokemon search cards.
Wow, okay.
So that's like for you playing 12 Eladamri's Call.
No, it's nuts. No, it's never happened.
In Magic, that's crazy.
No. It would also be very inefficient in Magic.
So the reason why it's done that way, I believe, is because... So let's just go back to the energy land, the conversation. So in Magic, you're playing lands on the table, and you are using the lands per turn to play things.
Almost everything costs mana in Magic.
Yeah. So you're tapping a land to create mana, and then at the end of the turn, you get all of that back and you get to do it again. Pokemon, you are committing your lands or energies to a Pokemon. The Pokemon requires energies to attack, but nothing else in the game requires energies.
Okay.
So instants and sorceries and enchantments, stadiums, supporters, and items Pokemon players, they don't require energy to use.
You guys are limited in one of those, right? You can only play one trainer. One supporter per turn.
Yes.
So,
and the supporter is significantly better than an item card would be. Item, you can play as many as you like. But, and then besides the fact of it being one per turn, they normally come with a cost.
Okay.
Like, for example, Magic, you've got Windfall, Pokemon... Okay, well, Windfall's for both. So Pokemon have, like, a staple support in every deck is discard your hand and draw 7 cards.
See, we don't mess around with that much. Like, I would say every time that Magic produces a card that says, like, discard your hand, draw 7, it's very limited. It's either very expensive or it's very old from a time where they didn't know how to balance cards properly.
Yeah.
These days, they don't print a card like that very easily because, to be honest, a fair rate for Magic to draw a new card, like a fresh card, is maybe a staple is in Divination in blue. That's 2 in a blue, draw 2 cards as sorcery. Now in black, maybe you get like 2 mana, draw 2. And I would say in Commander, a good rate is like 1 mana, draw 1 card, or 2 mana, draw like 2 cards. Those are good, very good rates.
And normally lose some life.
And usually lose a life or have a requirement. This is like the pendant. Yeah, sack creature. We have a few cards that like cantrip, so they cost a mana and they go card neutral. But you get maybe some selection out of it. So you get to look like the top 3 and pick one, or maybe you get to like put some back, or maybe you look at the top 2, we scry. So you look at the top few, put some away at the bottom of your deck, draw a new one. But we don't mess around with drawing 7. That's not something we casually do.
I mean, a lot of Pokemon cards are like, you know, like you say, like draw 2 is like a standard for Magic, right? Like the worst supporter available in Pokemon is draw 3 cards.
Wow,
that's like
okay.
the worst available. Although the thing is, like, you've got the items do something similar as well. So you'd have items that be like, look at the top 2 cards, keep 1, discard 1.
Okay.
Like, and that's an item. So you could play 4 of those in a turn, essentially. So you could dig through your deck a little bit. Digging in Pokemon is like, it's a skill that I developed in Pokemon, and I believe that I do it very well.
Okay.
I believe that digging, like deck digging, is an art. Like for me, it's an art form. Like I'm really good at like going through resources to dig.
Okay.
Like, you know, I guess it goes down to the point where, I mean, some of my viewers might not even know this. Legolas is on set. Is that like a nickname for you?
Legolas, I know. That's a new one for me. Is that because I've lost a leg, or is that because my gorgeous hair over here? What are we doing here?
So just to go back, so some people don't know, I was a casino croupier.
Okay.
And it may shock people, but I do know how to count cards.
I don't know that.
So I do know how to count cards. So, and that does, Taxi Driver says it's the leg. I have, in Pokemon, like, I'm very good at weighing out the odds.
Okay.
So there's 30 cards left in deck. I know that there's 3 copies of this card. I have discard hand, draw 7, and I know from that 7 I may potentially draw another 2 digging cards. I've got abilities on the field that will allow me to discard and draw. So I start working out the odds. Every time I play something, I'll be like, okay, the odds of me getting that ratio is this and this. So, and then also Pokemon have got prize cards. I'll get to that in a second. But you start weighing out the possibility of like, can you hit what you need?
Sure.
And generally, I dig like mid game to get to the point where I have a win con in line, right? Magic is not that simple. Sorry, okay, cool. That's something else.
So I just want to know, Pokemon 4 copies of a card?
Exactly the same as Magic.
Same as standard Magic, not EDH. EDH is singleton, but normal Magic is 4 copies of the card.
4 copies and as many energies as you like. Magic, so non-basic lands is 4.
Yeah.
Pokemon special energies are 4.
Okay, cool.
So the deck building side of it is the same.
Pretty similar.
Pokemon is 60, no more, no less.
Okay.
Magic, you can have more than 60.
We can have more than 60 in our non-singleton, non-EDH, I suppose, formats.
Second is that Magic has got a sideboard.
Yes.
Pokemon, if Pokemon...
Very hectic, actually.
Okay. If Pokemon had a 3-card sideboard, the standard would be wrecked.
3 cards, you think?
3 cards.
Yeah.
I can tell you now that the top 4 decks have got 1-card counters.
Wow. Just like, solidly, you place us down on the table, we're done.
One card and you're having a bad time.
Ooh, okay.
If you, like, I always said, like, in the old days, I was like, 5-card sideboard for Pokemon, let's try it out.
Okay.
5 cards too much. 3 cards, maybe, because, you know, when you're building your 60 card, if you want to tech for those top decks, it's taking a deck space.
Yeah.
Whereas you could have one of each and then have, like, another one of each in the sideboard, or whatever the case is.
Yeah, so typically speaking in Magic, we get a 15-card sideboard.
That's bonkers.
Right? So the rules are usually, first game, you don't sideboard, like, regardless. You just play a straight deck, and then usually it's a best of 3, typically, so then you get to start sideboarding in. And I would say decks tend to sort of tech against their worst matchups, or matchups where they think if they had particular tech cards they think could win. And most of those are very, very strong. So in Magic, we have lots of cards similarly that hose. These are cards that are very effective at doing one particular thing. The best example I can think is we like playing with our graveyard. And there's a card... There's Graveyard Hate, and some of the best Graveyard Hate comes down before the game begins. So you say, like, I've got this in my hand,
Leyline of the Void,
Leyline of the Void, and it just comes into play. It was free. It costs 4 mana, but it just slaps down, and it just only exiles your opponent graveyard, so you can be on graveyards. But if your opponent's on graveyards, they've got to get rid of this thing first.
Yeah.
And a lot of decks can't get past that. They really can't. So then there becomes this thing about, like, oh, your opponent's probably going to bring in Sideboard Hate. I know what sideboard hate they're going to bring in. I'm going to bring in sideboard hate for their sideboard hate. And you start to do this sort of back and forth that happens. There's even more niche things people do where they sort of switch out the deck, right? So maybe they have a payoff that is X, and instead their deck now has a payoff that is Y, and you sideboard for X. And now they've switched their deck around, and now their deck's playing Y, and you don't have answer Y.
They basically changed their win con on the sideboard.
100%.
Yeah. I was about to say, like, yeah, so... Very, very valid point, Cubbies, and I'll get to that in a second. Magic also, the definition of control in Magic and control in Pokemon are 2 completely different things. So, Magic about control is to try and stop your opponent from playing.
Basically, you stop them resolving.
Deny as much as you can.
Yeah, you stop them, because you can play in other people's turns, we have counter spells. So literally, it's the same as like a counter spell you can think of like in not like Magic World, right? It's like, I play the spell, it stops whatever you were doing, full stop. It never necessarily came into the field, it never got an effect, you didn't get anything of it.
It just goes away.
And usually, these spells are anywhere from like 2 mana, sometimes 1 mana, to maybe 3. And people are often playing spells that are more than 2 or 3. So, usually you're getting kind of like a discount as well. And so control decks will be like, okay, whatever you do, like whatever I let you have is insignificant. Like, I don't actually care about it. Or, I'm just going to wait and remove it more efficiently later. Yeah. And then we will go like 1-for-1 kind of basis, or maybe 2-for-1s. And eventually, I as the control player will put down something nice, big, and juicy. And that will win the game. There's maybe 1 card that I will protect with my life. That will win the game. And you never got to really play Magic. You got to cast spells, you got to play lands, but you never got to have anything happen, quote unquote.
Yeah, and the way around that is maybe to try and be more aggressive, to try and finish the game before control even becomes a factor.
Which we call aggro.
Yeah. So Pokemon has got control in the sense that it plays board denial, so where you'll play energy denial.
Wow.
So you will like start discarding energies off the board.
Okay, we have land destruction. You can do that. Land destruction,
right? Except in Pokemon, it's not as frowned upon.
Okay, it's very frowned upon in EDH, and it's kind of frustrating to play against in even like competitive settings. People don't like when you see land destruction.
No,
it happens, but like you don't like it.
So Pokemon's control actually comes down to a war of attrition only.
Okay,
the only way you win control in Pokemon is to make your opponent deck out.
Wow. So you guys do deck out as well?
You do deck out.
Okay, we also deck out. Which one of the interesting things, you're saying like you were digging like 7 cards, 12 cards. We can't dig usually that deep, I would say. Like, we can dig a bit, and you can storm in Magic, so you can start, there's a whole archetype about like drawing lots of cards, playing lots of mana quickly,
and then like
winning with something. But usually games don't go like to decking, like unless you want to.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing in Pokemon. If you're playing control, you're gonna have one like the fattest fat boy in front, and you're gonna play a lot of heals so that he never gets KO'd.
Okay.
And the idea is that you kind of limit your opponent down. So the one variant of control is energy denial, and then you just play a little bit of mull. Pokemon has got nowhere near the mull Magic has.
We have so much mull. We love mull.
In Pokemon, it's not even close, right?
Okay.
So it's that, but then you've got a separate type of like control in Pokemon where you're basically locking down type. So for example, you've got cards that say your opponent can't play any item cards.
Wow, that sounds strong.
It's an attack.
Yeah.
And during the next turn, they can't play
do the
items.
thing. Okay.
So, or they can't play supporters, or whatever the case is.
So you lock them out of like a card type, and now they're not doing that anymore.
So you get that out very quickly, you stop them from like moving on in the game, and that's just basically how it ends. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not common at all, because if you don't, like, it's best out of 3 in Standard. If you don't win game 1, you lose.
So, it's interesting about, I don't know how many more sort of archetypes there are in Pokemon, but I would say because of Magic's sort of long history, and every time a set comes out, they often introduce new mechanics. Over time, we've come like with a lot of archetypes. So there's not just like aggro. There's another kind of aggro, I suppose you can call it, where it's called like taxes or hate bears. And the idea is you're playing like low-cost creatures that attack well, but they have effects that like nuke people playing control, or they stop people playing storm, right? They stop people playing maybe what we would call a unfair Magic. One of the best examples of this is maybe Thalia, right? She's 1 and a white, it's a 2/1 first striker, which means it does damage first. It's a 2/1, which is like a really good stat line for Magic, like let's not joke about here. And she says non-creature spells your opponent's cost... No, sorry, non-creature spells cost 1 more, so that's symmetrical. And so the idea is you don't play that many non-creatures, and your opponent's looking at all their non-creatures in the hand being like, everything's 1 more.
Yeah. So, I mean, like... we're going to reel ourselves back in a second here. We're going back down to the basics. So the similarities again. So we went over lands. We went over creatures. So win conditions in Pokemon, the ways to win the game. Magic, you've got life total.
Yeah, you can reduce your opponent down from 20 to 0, or from an EDH from 40 to 0.
Pokemon, you don't have a life total, but you got prize cards.
I've seen those.
So you take a knockout, you take a prize, you take all your prizes, you win the game.
Okay.
So that also brings a little bit of a weird aspect that Magic doesn't have. The fact that you are laying 6 of your cards from the top of your deck as your prizes. So you need to, like, almost in the beginning of the game, like on your first search, your first tutor, go through your deck and then try and work out what your prize cards are. Right? So
we used to have Anti.
Okay, I don't know what it is.
So we used to have, when Magic just came out, this is like the 1990, I think 1992, 3, 4, somewhere around there, pre my era of life. We had Anti, and Anti basically worked at the beginning of the game. You would put the top few cards, I don't know if it was 1 or 2 or 3, and you would play for prizes, but it wasn't like prizes like you would accumulate them in the game. You would take those cards home with you if you won.
Your opponent's prize.
You would take your opponent's Anti.
Pokemon used to play that too.
So you used to play for your opponent's cards. And obviously they stopped that like pretty soon afterwards.
Because like, could be like a...
Could be very expensive. It feels really bad to walk away from a table having literally lost physical cards. It makes like tournaments impossible because like you're losing cards as you play the tournament. Like, how does that work?
That's Pokemon old school rules.
Yeah, you
used to do like 6 prize cards, and when you knock out an opponent's Pokemon, you take one of their prizes. You get to keep it.
Wow. Yeah.
Like that was like. I was soul destroying. Like, to lose a game.
And then if you do something good as well, you're like,
it could be like an integral part of your deck. Yeah. And it's gone. Like,
and then you're going to find a new copy. And you're walking around with an incomplete deck as well.
Yeah.
So you're going to walk with extra cards.
Hopefully have some extra cards there.
Yeah. I mean, so they got rid of all the anti cards. They don't print them anymore, and they've banned them from basically every format. So you can't play anti anymore. But it wasn't that used to exist in Magic.
Yeah, it's very valid. Pokemon, another way you lose. So, like Magic, you lose if your life total is out, and well, if you take out all of your opponent's life points, and Also, if your opponent decks out, you win the game.
Yeah, so if you were to go to draw a card, and there's nothing to draw from, your deck's empty, then you lose the game. And then we also have a few others. There's a few cards that just say you win the game.
Sure.
So there's a number of cards that, for whatever reason in Magic, they just say, like, if you meet this requirement, you win the game. Most of them have typically been hard to achieve.
Target opponent loses the game.
That exists, but usually the thing is they've been hard to achieve, so they've required 12 mana, 10 mana, or lots of setup, or like a very particular niche thing. And then more printers like flavorful cards that can you do this?
Except Sovereign doesn't seem that far.
But except until recently, when now cards that say like you actually win the game have become, I would say one particular card, Thassa's Oracle, become quite popular.
Yes.
So there is like, they kept printing these cards to say if you would draw the last card in your deck, instead of losing the game, you win the game. And they kept making them sort of better and better. And now recently we got one that does it, instead of being like a static effect, like it just always happens. It puts an ability on the stack. So basically it like triggers something.
Win when it comes into
So when that ability like finishes, like it happens, it checks to see if you meet a requirement and then you win the game. And that one has proved to be very, very strong.
That's the one.
That is the one. Like, so that is its own win condition now.
So Pokemon is different in that sense that you also lose. So Magic, just correct me if I'm wrong, the next time you would draw a card, you lose the game. Right?
From an empty deck, yeah.
Cool. So Pokemon, it's the same but different. Pokemon, you do lose when your deck is out, but only if you fail to draw a card at the beginning of your turn. So in your draw step.
Okay, that's different.
So you could discard your hand and draw 7 with a 5-card deck, play your turn out, and you have to win that turn. It's like your last turn, right? So, yes, coming back to that art form of digging, you know that the win con is in those 3 cards. You just toss your hand, pick up the last 3, win the game.
Okay.
So it's like the last Hail Mary. If you don't win, your opponent just passes and they win the game.
Sure.
Like,
so I would say almost we never have situations where people are like, people will dig for answers in their deck, maybe for win cons in their deck, but they never dig into like the end of their deck.
No.
1v1 formats barely ever go to like the last X cards of their deck. That doesn't really happen. And even in EDH, it's very rare that you go for like the last, you know, you probably don't even see like 30 cards in your deck in a whole game. Maybe 40 if it's like a long game.
Pokemon also has more resource management than Magic has. You got quite a number of cards that will shuffle cards from your discard pile and back into your deck. Like 2 Pokemon and 2 energies. Shuffle them back into the deck.
Those cards have been printed a lot in Magic, but they don't tend to see play. And the reason is because like
people don't dig.
People don't dig that much. Like your ability to dig is limited by mana. It's not free, right? And so it means that in Magic, if you want to dig like 10 cards deep, that probably cost you like 4 or 5 mana maybe. And so that means it actually took away from your turn. Now you can't do anything. You found the card, but you're not doing anything for the turn. Yeah. And then you pass.
Well, that's the difference because it costs mana to play spells.
It costs mana to play spells in Magic. So you can't just dig for forever and find something good.
Here's one part that's going to shock you, right? So you don't play 60 card, but I'm sure you have an idea of what the numbers should be like on your ratio of land, spells, creatures.
I played a little bit of 60 card Magic. I didn't really enjoy it because it's almost never like quote unquote for fun. It's always very serious, competitive. There's sideboards, Okay. So sure, I know about ratios and things.
So rough ratio, you have like 24 lands in a
24 lands is very reasonable. Aggro decks, maybe 20, 21, 22. Okay. If you're playing older formats and you have these like mana rocks and stuff, maybe you'll go down to like 20 or 19.
Okay, well, let's say 23, 24, right?
Yeah, that sounds normal.
Okay, creatures?
I mean, this goes from deck to deck. Some decks don't play any creatures.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Right? But I would say...
about like a rough standard deck.
Yeah, so when people start playing, they kind of say that you're going to play 24 lands. So that leaves you about 36 cards. And those remaining 36 cards are going to be 9 sets of 4. Right? So you're going to pick 9 cards that work sort of well together, and you're going to play 4 copies of each of them. And you would probably say that maybe 2 or 3 of those slots are set to like removal, maybe another 2 sets are set to like draw, and the remaining are creatures, because mostly, for the most part in Magic, you win by reducing life totals with creatures. That's how most Magic works. The older the format gets, the more sort of degenerate it gets, the less creatures you care about, the more sort of weird, wacky stuff you can do to win. Yeah. But I would say for the most part, yeah, you're probably playing about 16 creatures, maybe 20 creatures in your deck.
And then the rest is flavor.
Yeah, whatever. Stuff. Filtering, mana, whatever. Cool. Interaction.
Let's talk about Pokemon Standard.
Okay.
Let's just talk about a deck that just won a regional now.
Okay.
Energies in deck, 6.
6.
Okay.
Basic energies, energies.
Energies.
Okay.
6.
Wow.
Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 or 7, right?
7 makes me very uncomfortable. Let's call it 6.
Pokemon. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe 11 Pokemon.
Okay.
The rest are trainer cards.
How do you function on 6 energy? Because imagine you can function on 6 energy, but I've seen Pokemon they want 4 energy sometimes.
Yeah.
They want 3 energy.
So it's dig. So the whole idea is like in that particular deck, the main staple supporter allows you to search your deck for 2 energies and attach it to your Pokemon.
Okay.
Well,
that's strong.
You have Pokemon that like have an ability, so like a activated ability that allows you to draw cards. So you literally
you see those 6 energies every game.
Like unless they are prized,
yeah,
they're there.
Once they get prized and you just down an energy or 2.
Well, then you just scoop with the game too.
Like once you're down like 2 energy, like randomly 2 got down.
2 energies. I'll
3.
I'll go.
Can you play 3 down?
You can pilot that deck with 2 energies.
That is very scary. Is it a control strategy? Sort of like
aggro?
It's
super aggressive.
It's very aggressive.
Very aggressive.
Wow. Okay.
So generally speaking, if I like outside of that, a deck will have a competitive deck between 10 and 13 energies. 10 and 15 Pokemon.
Okay.
Maybe up to 20 if you're playing like multiple stages, and 30 plus trainers.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, because I suppose in Pokemon, like you still need to finish with a Pokemon, right? You can't really win without playing a Pokemon, correct?
Somebody says it's one land spy, but Pokemon.
One land spy, but Pokemon. What's one land spy?
Well,
I don't know.
I thought maybe something you know.
No. Some Pulp is 18. I see that's from, is it Cubbies?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, some of the older formats can play less lands because they have acceleration, right? So in the same way that like you spoke about fetching up lands from your from the deck into the field instead of playing your 1 land per turn, these decks will play a card that says here's a mana.
Yeah.
Like for free. So they'll play Lotus Petal. Crack a Lotus Petal, it costs nothing, and it just gives you 1 mana right now. That's all it does.
It's like Lotus Petal, and then Mox Diamond, and then Chromox, and then Mana Vault, and then Mana Crypt.
Most of these cards that make mana are not legal in more recent formats. You've got to play older formats to like find cards that quote unquote make mana, especially at those rates. Like 0 mana, make 1 mana is very strong in Magic. Wait 1 mana this turn is Lotus Petal is a competitive card. Like we play it now.
And it's gone.
And it's gone. It's 1 mana right now, and that's it. And it gets played a lot. And a lot of those cards get like played a lot.
But 0 mana, make mana, and get to keep the card.
Yeah,
is not only played but is expensive.
Is expensive and old. They don't make them anymore. Really.
Well, I mean,
they do.
Mana Crypt was made not too long ago.
No, Mana Crypt's old. The most recent one is one that requires you to have a very particular card type on field. Is Mox Amber.
Mox Amber, yeah.
Mox Amber is a new one. Chromox is like, I don't know, late 2000s kind of thing. Mox Opal's also pretty late. So I would say for the most part, they will print these cards, but they make them far worse than what they used to be. All these cards are based on the old Power 9 in Magic, which is like our original Alpha set. This is the first set of Magic ever, produced by Richard Garfield, and they didn't really know how to balance Magic at the time. So a lot of the cards are renowned for being exceptionally strong, and then there are cards that are like complete duds. Like they do honestly nothing, and they've never seen any play. But our Power 9 are essentially 5 cards that instead of being basic lands, do the exact same thing, but are spells, and they make mana like eternally. So instead of playing a land, you can play these, and they make a mana, but they don't replace your land slots. You can play like a land in one of these in the same turn. And then they just make mana forever. Black Lotus.
Banned in like basically everything.
Yeah, so those are the Moxes. Then there's Black Lotus, 0 mana, you play it, and then you sacrifice it, so you put it in your graveyard, or your discard pile, and it adds 3 mana for now. 3 mana of 1 color. That is probably Magic's best card, like it's Magic's best enabler. Ancestral Recall, 1 blue, draw 3. So again, like I spoke about, 1 mana, draw 1 is like good rate in Magic. So 1 mana, draw 3 is insane. Time Walk, 1 in a blue, take an extra turn. So that's you untap, you draw a card again, you get another combat phase. So that's insane. Now that effect is at like 5 or 6 mana basically. And the last one would be Time Twister. So that is you shuffle your graveyard and your hand back into your deck and you draw a fresh 7. And that's strong for drawing fresh 7 is crazy for 3 mana. Shuffling your graveyard back in is pretty good as well because you can put back in threats. And also it enables you to do like very strong stuff with like playing cards and then making mana and then casting this and drawing a fresh 7 and playing more cards, make more mana, draw another 7. So it's very strong.
Wild stuff.
So that's power 9. Like it's basically it's ridiculous.
It's banned in everything outside of Vintage, right?
Is it banned in everything? Yeah, it's banned in everything outside of Vintage.
And if I think in Vintage, isn't it like limited as well?
In Vintage, they're all limited, so that just means you can only play 1 copy. So you're not playing 4 of these cards; you're playing 1 of each. Yeah?
If you're playing 4 ofs anyway, you're driving a Lamborghini.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
they're very, very expensive because they haven't been reprinted. They're not allowed to be reprinted, and they were in very. The supply is very low because they were printed at a time where they didn't know how big Magic would get.
100%. So,
I feel like we're missing one of the power 9, right? 5 Moxen, Black Lotus, Time Walk, Time Twister. That's power 8.
But you said the 1 blue to draw 3?
An Ancestral. Okay, there we go. Okay, there we get it. Good.
Yes.
I'll be ashamed if I didn't get the 9.
I don't know. I just know the Moxen and
Black
Lotus,
that's fine. That's
and I know Time Twister is in there, and that's about it. So look, obviously, we could go on and rant and rave about how amazing Commander is for hours, right? But if you could recommend to maybe some Pokemon players that are watching want to get into the game, like how would you recommend that they would get into the game?
So, I mean, first off, there is so much Commander content now available, like on YouTube to go watch. So go watch some content first. Like, get into it, understand the rules, understand the dynamics, see if it's something you want. Then the next thing I would say is, like, make sure that you can play Commander. So unlike other formats, you need to have 3 other people to go play with. I know a lot of people who have built Commander decks and then been like, well, I don't have the time to go play. So they build 5 or 6 decks and then they realize that the local game store is, too far from them, or they can't make the day, or their friends don't play.
Yeah.
So make sure you can play, make sure that you want to play. Those are fundamentals. Then I would say go to like an LGS or find a friend who already plays Magic. And in Commander, it's pretty normal to borrow someone's deck. They're usually not too expensive. It's 100 card singleton. It's very casual. So people will often let you borrow their deck. You ask politely, and you try out a few different decks first. You get an idea of what you like. In Magic, there's like 5 flavors. There's 5 colors of Magic. Black, red, green, white, and blue. They have essentially very different characteristics. They can do very different things.
So basically, if you want to keep friends, don't play blue.
Yeah, so blue is the counter spell mana. Black is like power at any cost. Red is like angry, go now. Green is make mana big and stompy. And then white, white does stuff.
White's like Internet Explorer.
Yeah, White's complicated, man. White's complicated. We don't talk too much about White. White's got a lot better as time's gone on, but it had initially quite a confused sort of identity. It used to be about like healing, and then they realized that healing in Magic's not very good. So I have to explain this. Like in Pokemon, you can heal your Pokemon. In Magic, you can't really heal your creatures, because what happens is they take damage, and then if they drop to like 0, they die, but they don't keep that damage on them. When you go to your next turn,
you don't
the damage is gone, and you don't have to heal.
Because if they survive the hit, they are healed.
They are healed automatically, right? So it's all about like killing the creature now. And for the most part, a lot of spells don't even say like do damage; they just say kill it. And so White's idea of like healing the creatures and healing themselves wasn't very good. And then White like did a bit of taxing, so then White like said like you have to pay 1 more for that, and that was okay, but it wasn't very liked by players. And then White became like the removal color, and more recently, and maybe in the past as well, White became like an aggressive color, kind of like red, but more like creature based. So they were like, I'm gonna play a bunch of cheap creatures that are quite good,
like soldiers.
Like soldiers, yeah. So I'm gonna assemble an army and hit you down with this army. But that turned out to be like sort of okay, I would say. White Weenie is historically not the best thing in the world.
I just love the like. Then we move to like tax. You're gonna pay 1 more for that. That's good. Like.
So unlike all the other colors, like blue has always been about like drawing cards and countering things and playing with like magic. So we're gonna bounce creatures away. So you're gonna summon a creature and I'm gonna bounce it away, and I'm gonna counterspell it. I'm just gonna say goodbye to it, and I'm gonna draw cards. And black's always been like, I can do anything, but like I have to pay life or lands or creatures. And green has been bigger stompy, but white like really hasn't. I would say even now, white has like lots of identities, and so like white's complicated.
They say that Grimy 101 says Seb is the elf guy.
I love elves,
and
yeah.
Cubby's saying that Seb likes playing fetch with his dog Paco as well.
Yeah. So they're referring to some commanders I play. So when they say I'm an elf guy, it's not that I have like a fetish. I like playing. Okay, I like playing. Green has a lot of elves. They historically made mana. I like making lots of mana. And so it's a really great tribe. If you like going wide, you make lots of elves. You make them big with like pump effects, so they're like big for this turn only. They make lots of mana. It's a lot of fun.
Like, elves, I think, are, like, I might be wrong, but elves are like the most common tribal deck.
Yeah, elves are one of the most common tribal decks for sure.
Elves and dragons, I guess.
Elves, dragons, goblins.
Goblins, yeah.
Elves, dragons, goblins. Humans, oddly enough, are a very common tribe. A card gets printed with human a lot, but humans has only became like a tribe recently, like in terms of like...
Moda?
Yeah, like the idea that like you're playing creatures that are humans because they work together in some way has been only more like a recent idea, even though Magic printed humans for a long time. Zombies is pretty popular. Vampires, it's okay.
Zombies, yeah, I agree with zombies. Vampires,
vampires is okay.
Well, Cubbies thinks that goblins is the highest.
Goblins, so elves, goblins, angels, dragons were all printed in like the first Magic set, and so they've like cemented themselves as being tribes. Like we will always have elves, different flavors of elves.
I'm a huge I'm aggro, I'm red, I'm gruel to the best part, and I love goblins, but I do have I have to say I think elves are a little bit more popular than goblins.
Yeah, and I would also say maybe like power-wise, there are decks like in the oldest, most powerful formats that are goblins. There are decks in the oldest, most powerful decks that are elves. But in terms of raw power, being green has a lot of advantages compared to being red. Yeah, making more mana than you're like allowed to is very strong, and that's what they gave us.
Yeah, Merfolk's a good tribe too. Yeah.
So Merfolk, while being like one of Magic's oldest tribes, also printed in Alpha, has historically never been that strong. Unfortunately, it's very loved. They're very flavorful. But they're not very powerful. In actual fact, they've gotten worse as time's gone on, I think. They're really struggling to show. And that's because Merfolk are blue. And so blue doesn't get good creatures, typically speaking.
Sure.
And so they've got to make the creatures already kind of worse.
Look, let's not discount the fact that we are forgetting tribal, which is Sliver.
Yeah.
Like, don't touch me on my Sliver. Like, I had a Sliver deck for like all of 2 games, and then I broke it up because everybody hated me.
Yeah, so Slivers are this weird, like, snake-looking worm symbiote things, and they basically just care about other Slivers. So all Slivers will say, all Slivers get something. Like, all Slivers get +1/+1. All Slivers have flying. All Slivers make mana. And you will just, like, swarm the board with Slivers. But the thing people hate about them is there's no real, like, love or affiliation, like, towards Slivers like there is for elves. Like, people like them, but, like, what the hell's a Sliver? And they tend to just, like, clutter up the board. They tend to just be, like, these big, random, like, 2-mana things, and then just not become...
I loved how the tokens have evolved. Have you seen how the Sliver tokens, like, they're looking more and more human-like?
Yeah.
I like that Magic's doing that. It's got a bit of a flavor to it. Like, they are evolving. The Sliver, the Hive is evolving.
Yeah, so there are literally like a hive mind in Magic, and one of like Magic's like unique creature types. Like, we don't have many creature types that like only Magic have. We have like generic ones you might see in like D&D or maybe any other fantasy game, like zombies, knights, clerics. But Slivers are ours. Like, we have Slivers. And they are beloved and hated. There's a love-hate relationship going on there.
That's I think that's an understatement. I think people who love Slivers are people who play Slivers.
Yeah. And people who hate Slivers are people who play against Slivers. Like, you don't have an opinion about Slivers till you play your first game, and then you have a very radical opinion about them.
I still remember, like, I built a Sliver deck and had, like, some guy come over. We played, like, casual, and he's like, he hasn't played in a long time. What have I got? And I'm like, I'm saying I got this, and I got this, and I got Slivers. And he's like, I remember that word. I was like, okay, I've never played with it. It's 5 colors. It might be a little bit difficult. And, like, turn 4, I was like, Yes, as I'm breaking this deck.
What was the commander? Which sliver was it?
First sliver.
First sliver. So the first sliver gives other slivers haste or cascade, right?
Cascade,
So
yeah.
it has cascade and it gives other slivers cascade. So it's just like you play a sliver, you get another sliver. You play a sliver, you get another sliver. That sliver cascades too. It's disgusting. Like, it's not fair.
So Grimy saying, let's not forget tribal enchantments. Looks at Kyle.
Oh,
I like enchantress decks though. I mean,
so in Magic we also have like subtypes of cards, and those become like
beautiful.
kind of like their own tribes too, right? So we have like land tribal, like you'll play more lands than normal,
yeah,
and you'll play cards that benefit of you having lands. And we'll play enchantment tribal, typically called like enchantress, because we have cards that say when an enchantment enters, draw a card, and those are called enchantresses. A lot of Magic's like names for cards are based on the first one, so we have so we have enchantress. We have artifact decks. There's loads of artifact decks. You can choose. You can play lots of artifacts. You can play big artifacts. You can sacrifice them. There's different flavors of that.
Mechanics also become an archetype. Yeah, I mean, there's so much.
Magic has had. We're on our 30 year. This is actually a really good year. This is our 30 year of Magic. And on average, they were about 3 to 4 sets per year, kind of. So plus more now. So maybe you're thinking about like 150 sets, and every set was maybe a couple 150 cards, 200 cards kind of vibe. And sets have become bigger now, and sets are more frequent now. So we have probably over 20,000 cards to look at. I don't remember the last time I looked at it.
I mean, Pokemon hit their 25th anniversary this year. So Pokemon, I think, is the second oldest game next to Magic.
Magic is the oldest TCG.
The oldest TCG, hands down. And it's definitely, you can see that Magic and Pokemon have stood the test of time. Whether it be the nostalgia factor or the fact that the mechanics have been thought through for so many years. Like, you get new TCGs that pop up with insane hype and then just crash and burn.
Crash immediately. Yeah, they have no longevity. I think one of the things they've managed really well in Magic is our initial sets were very strong. They were very polarizing, right? Like, they were very bad cards and very good cards. But as Magic's gone on, especially the middle years, Magic got quite, I would say, balanced and fair. Recently, with a change in like design philosophy, some cards have become stronger again. We're back on like this problem of power creep, like other games have. But for the most part, Magic cards have actually gotten worse with time, and that's a good thing.
I just want to point out that question before it disappears. It says here, Vish said that are they all new cards, or are they
majority reprint cards with new artwork?
It sounds like there could be a bazillion cards of different tribes.
It's a majority reprint cards with new. No, so what happens in Magic, and I think this probably happens in all TCGs, is we have like bulk, right? So we release a set of like chaff. Yeah, we release a set of like 200 cards, but maybe only like 40 to 50 of them are interesting. The rest of them are like rehashes or reskins of old ideas. They're a new vanilla boy that has a different tribe or a different casting cost. Or maybe it's the same card, but they've tinkered with it a little bit. Like, oh, this was very strong like a year ago. Let's make it cost 1 more and see what it is. Or this was very weak. Let's make it cost 1 less. Or let's bump up the stat a little bit and let's play around with those numbers. Yeah. We don't tend to get like mechanically unique cards, I would say, that often. Even in sets where there's like a new mechanic, the cards kind of... There's a joke in Magic that like everything that you can do additionally with the card is just a different version of Kicker, which is like you pay more mana and you get a better effect. And so basically almost all effects in Magic are like Kicker. So you pay some more mana
and you get a little bit out.
Or you meet some condition, you get something out. So there's like a version of Kicker. And for the most part, I would say like 80% of Magic like things fall in that. But when something's new, it's new and it's very interesting. I was speaking about how like White has moved from being like, you know, about healing to being about like little boys and soldiers and stuff to now being about like taxing. And most recently, White has been about trying to play catch up. So it's like, this is because of Commander and because of like the nature of Commander. White has gotten a bunch of cards that say, we're going to make like the table more even now. So I'm going to get resources so I'm equal to you. I'm going to go find my lands. I'm going to draw my cards.
Yeah, if somebody has more, then I get more.
Yeah.
Like,
This is a very new thing for White. It's them trying to fix one of White's problems in Commander, which is White is supposed to be like the fairest color in Magic, and Commander is not really about being fair. We have too many cards, there's too many cool interactions. Fair Magic is pretty boring Magic for the most part, so White is not very good in that way, and so they're trying to fix it like by doing this.
So that's a great question by Vish. With such a huge total card set from a collector's point of view, how collectible are the cards?
Ooh,
so
wow, loaded question.
Yeah, I know in South Africa, dozens, if not hundreds, of Pokemon collectors. People who try to finish sets, people who collect certain cards. In Magic, in the time that I've been buying and selling Magic cards, I've met one collector.
People don't collect in the same way. So there's two, I suppose, problems. One is that for the most part, besides a very exclusive list of cards called the Reserve List, Wizards of the Coast can reprint whatever they want. And they don't tell us when they're going to necessarily either. And I would suppose the other sort of issue is because cards are sort of like linked to their plane. So what I mean by that is like we in Magic, we don't just like exist on one world. We exist in like a multiverse and we go from like plane to plane. And so what happens is they will link a card to a plane by giving it a very particular name. Oracle of Maldaya, Ketria Triome, something of Mirrodin, whatever. And now you're kind of stuck. Like you can't print that card elsewhere. So now we've got to wait years until we go back.
And then it's Neon Dynasty, Kamigawa.
Yes. Yeah.
Like now we're back in Kamigawa again,
but
so now we can reprint something.
So now we can reprint it kind of thing. So oftentimes that means that they can't just, they will have the permission to reprint the cards as much as they want. They can't sort of feasibly do it. And Magic also has a very big following and player base, playing lots of different formats. And so almost every single card that's playable is always playable and kind of always wanted, if you know what I mean. Any card that's good enough to see play maybe in like standard or maybe modern will continue to see play for the next 20 years kind of vibe. At least that how it was like historically. And so there are numerous cards that have seen a lot of play since the beginning of Magic. And they've seen play since like their first printing. And so then Wizards of the Coast have to try and like keep up with demand by reprinting cards. But for the most part, cards are quite collectible. If they're on the reserve list, they see a lot of play. Or if they were printed at high rarity, the same as any other TCG. If they're printed at mythic or rare, and they're in demand, then they're pretty expensive.
I mean, Pokemon is the same aspect where when a card is being played, the price hikes up, everybody wants it. It's in high demand.
But then you guys rotate, right? Because there's no forever format, is there?
There is Expanded, which is a block format, but there's no forever format.
So
there are some people who play Legacy, which is like very old, but cards rotate out. South Africa is,
but it's not that popular, right? Like this Legacy.
No, Legacy is not popular at all.
And the Expanded,
Expanded in South Africa is not popular.
So the thing about Magic is their premier format used to be Standard. That was like the most recent 2 years of cards.
And now it's
Commander.
Oh, it's not Pioneer.
Now it's Commander. The most played way to play Magic, besides whatever you want to do with it, like besides like just buying a box and going home and figuring out the rules.
Yeah. Commander is the most popular format, but
it's the most popular actual constructed like format
from
we can play.
From a competitive standpoint, you think Pioneer's taking
probably it's probably Pioneer or Modern.
Yeah.
Are probably more popular than Standard. Standard was in a very bad way for a while because of power creep. It lost a lot of players. And people don't like that happens in Standard, that rotation aspect of like, these cards are now not playable in my format anymore, I've got to get a whole new deck. While Modern is like, from this time forward. So Modern will always exist in the same kind of way with new cards. You'll never have to get rid of your deck, unless it gets pushed up by power.
I really like what they did with Pioneer, though. That was very intuitive of them, like, listening to people saying, like, Modern is the same flavor all the time. Although Pioneer is not that much different, because, I mean, you've got, like, you have Delver. Like,
yes, so just, like, I think what happens is, as Magic gets older and older and more sets come out, the card pool just gets too big, and eventually it homogenizes to something. What that something is like different between formats, but every time that we've had any kind of format, it has homogenized eventually to something over time. And so I think what they're going to keep doing is they're going to keep blocking it off from being like this point forward. So we had Vintage and Legacy, and before that there was Type 1 and Type 2, which were also like weird expanded versions of formats. And then they came up with Modern, and then Pioneer is basically the same thing as Modern, it's just from a different time point forward.
Yeah.
And they're going to keep doing that. So I think they're always going to have like Standard plus an older format that they support. Officially now, Wizards of the Coast supports like Standard. They will support Draft, because Draft sells packs. That's when you like buy cards and you literally start playing with them immediately. Within those cards. And Pioneer is a little bit older. And now one of the most popular ways to play Magic is Commander.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think that's because it's the unifying tabletop. So instead of going home and, instead of buying some product and going home and playing with it, you buy some product, you go home, you go play this official format that you can also play elsewhere. And it's not official in like, it's not official in that it's not owned by WotC, but Wizards of the Coast make product for it.
So they acknowledge the fact that it exists,
and they acknowledge that it's like their big money maker.
But they don't have control over the.
They don't have control over what happens in it. Yeah, they have. I would say very little control about it.
I just Grammy asked this question twice. What do you guys think of the Warhammer crossover, and what other crossovers would you like to see?
Have you played Warhammer?
Like the game?
Yeah. No. Okay, so I have a lot of friends who played Warhammer.
I have friends who play Warhammer,
and they seem to really like Warhammer.
Yeah.
And Magic's flavor is pretty like we can clash with Warhammer. It's not bad. Like this is like a nice middling. Like Magic, typically speaking, could be very dark at times. Like characters can die. It's not all happy go lucky. No. We used to have a lot of very dark cards that reference like demons. We still have demons, but they're more relaxed demons. They're not like, satanic demons. They're just like demons. They're just generic demons now. We got rid of those. And so now I would say Warhammer's a good fit. Like it's a really good fit. I had one problem with it, the Warhammer crossover. Almost all the cards were functionally unique. They were brand new cards. And that is like a really dangerous thing to do.
Of course, it's only functional within its own space.
And because we don't own the intellectual property for forever. So we can't like go on in future and make the same Warhammer cards. So what Magic has been doing recently, and I suppose the next sort of thing, is they've been doing Universes Beyond. We are collaborating with other intellectual properties to make cards of that flavor. It started with The Walking Dead. It's now gone on to... We're going to have Lord of the Rings sometime soon. We've had Warhammer, My Little Pony. They weren't legal, but they existed. Transformers, those are legal. Those get actually played. A Street Fighter. I don't know. There's so many.
I don't know something about Street Fighter.
Yeah,
like the whole Secret Lair thing. But I mean, it's very different when you bring in a whole set.
Yes. Like, so the problem is, there's like 200. There's probably like 200 new cards from this Warhammer set, and if any of those are very good or players want them, they're either going to get very, very expensive because you can't reprint them, or some new technology that they have is that they can reprint the card functionally but change the name and the art,
like they did with like
Godzilla.
Godzilla, or they did
Stranger Things.
The Stranger Things, they made a different name but the same black mechanic.
Yeah, so we had Stranger Things, and then they couldn't do, obviously, they couldn't have 11 anymore. Oof. So they replaced them with something else. I don't know what the name of the card is, but they got the same card, but it's just got a different name. And they treated the same.
The Bleach crossover.
Ooh, I could get behind that.
I'd put some money in
I want Bunkai. What does Bunkai do? Let's see it.
Flip the table.
I could get behind that. I really could. Getsuga Tensho, let's go there.
Let's do it. Yeah. Vish says you touched on cards being named depending on their featured plane. Does that mean planes rotate, or is it just players who play in a format? The planes kind of like the backstory.
Yeah. So in Magic, we are planeswalkers. We feature as entities that can move between planes.
Teleport.
So we go to new worlds.
Universes, yeah.
And all these worlds have like different societies, different rules, different creatures, right? And they only get linked by like mechanics.
You have ones that are very futuristic and robotic, and you have others that are very old and samurai. And
this is the way Magic has sort of kept up with times, right? It's like we got to see old sort of feudal like Japan with samurai and ninjas years ago when Kyle started playing, and now we returned and they're cyberpunky and it's like big cities, but they've still got like spirits and samurai and ninja, and it's just like it's sort of like updated. So that's something that Magic can do, is we can revisit planes. But in terms of people playing to like a plane, no. We release like a set. The set will usually be in a plane,
like themed for that plane,
and then we will play. Those cards will enter into the pool, and you can play them wherever they're legal. So you can play them in Standard the past 2 years. You could play them in Modern, where it's like forever. You can play them in Legacy, Vintage, blah blah blah. Like they're not stuck on their plane.
Yeah, which like a good example is like Pokemon releases card TCG sets according to the latest game that comes out for Switch.
Sun and Moon.
There was Sun and Moon sets. Now we have what are we now? Sword and Shield, and now we'll be going into Scarlet and Violet, which will be Scarlet and Violet cards that come out.
The flavor of the cards is independent for the most part from the playability, like where you can play them.
Yeah, that's
we do have block constructed, which is like you play within the set only. It's a fairly maybe more niche format. The closest thing we have to like playing within a plane is draft. You buy some cards, you exchange packs while picking cards, you build your deck right there, and then you play with it.
Magic, Pokemon doesn't have... Well, I've tried drafting in Pokemon, it was terrible. But
Well, you
Pokemon's got pre-release,
Okay.
Magic's got pre-release.
You need
that
like
kind of-
you probably need like trainers and items and stuff. That's probably the problem, right?
Yeah,
It's like
it's, Pokemon has solved that fact for pre-releasing, but maybe just to touch on that for a second, that's another difference. Magic pre-release, you'll get a promo card and you get 6 booster packs, I think.
yeah,
right?
so you're getting 6 of the brand new product that's random.
Yes.
Plus 1 rare.
So Pokemon did that for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
They had a promo card and 6 boosters. And then what they did now instead is you get 4 boosters and you get a promo card and a preset pack of cards in the box.
Staples.
So you'll get like, well, not necessarily staples, but you'll get a creature line and some trainers.
Oh, okay, that's even better.
Like you get it's almost like a mini playable deck, and the booster packs just supplement that.
Sure, so you have like a core theme that you're going to try and like center around.
It was the best thing they ever did because it made pre-release a lot easier. In the old days, it was a case of if you pulled a big card, like you pulled like a powerful basic Pokemon and you win the game.
Yeah, so the same thing happens sometimes in draft. Sometimes you just... But because they're rare and mythic, what actually tends to be more important in drafts is that you get the good commons and uncommons, because you can maybe have 3 or 4 of them, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
And unlike in normal, 1v1, you can have as many copies of a card if you want in draft and in constructed. So if you pulled 5 uncommons that are very good, you can play all 5 of them, huh? If you play the same 5, you can play 5 copies of one card that maybe just says like destroy a creature.
Yeah. Pokemon does the same thing.
Okay.
In pre-release, if you have more than 4 copies, you can play more than 4 copies.
Okay.
So it was pretty cool.
Deck building restrictions in normal Magic. We can play whatever you want to play, provided you could probably cast it. That's like the only real restriction. We have 3 color decks. Now popularized or even like 4 and 5 color decks competitively, which is something you didn't used to see beforehand.
Yeah.
But now we actually have genuinely... They used to be like, this is a 3 color deck that's playing 1 card that's an extra color and another card that's an extra color. So we're playing a 5 color deck, like it's 5, but it's actually 3, like splashing the 2. But now we have 5 color decks, like they're playing 5 colors.
Yeah, Pokemon, 2 types are like the maximum.
It's enough, right? Because you've got problems with energy, right?
I mean, because you need to commit those energies,
Yeah.
right? So 2
and you need
colors,
the right ones now as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some attacks require specific energies.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 colors, some decks may splash a 3rd color if it doesn't have a specified requirement.
Sure.
If it needs like 3 generic
Energy, then you can play
then
that.
yeah. But
Okay.
outside of that, I would say 2 types are the maximum.
How many types you got in Pokemon? What have you got? Like 12 more?
Yeah, don't make me do this, please.
Is it many? Is it too many to count? Imagine we have 5, so like that's it's easy.
So I'll see if I can get them all. So it's grass, water, fire,
Okay.
lightning, fighting, which is rock, right, as well, fighting, lightning, fight, psychic,
Metal, right? Or something?
well, I'll get there. I'm at the first types.
Oh,
psychic,
okay, wow.
So psychic, colorless,
Okay.
then metal, dark,
Mm-hmm.
and dragon, and they've just recently taken away fairy. There was fairy.
It was fairies. Okay.
It was there for 2 blocks. They took it away.
They took it away.
Yeah.
So there's no more. They're not gonna make fairies anymore, basically.
While fairies now fall under psychic type, like
Okay.
it used to.
Interesting. So Magic, we've always had 5 colors, and we're not gonna
There
change
just
it
aren't enough fairy Pokemon
to make it like real.
I personally feel like there aren't enough dragon type Pokemon either.
Sure.
But there aren't dragon energies. There was like 1 dragon energy printed once,
Okay.
and never again after that.
So this falls into like something that's very
Dragon is actually like multicolor in Magic.
yes.
So they require
That's
like
what I was
all
gonna ask.
dragons require like, for example, Dragonite attacks with electric and water,
Okay.
and Hydreigon attacks with water and fire. So they require 2 types: Rayquaza, electric and fire.
So something interesting, which I never thought about before, is that Magic was like a card game before it was anything else. So we were a card game, and then we added lore,
books and stuff.
and then we added the books and stuff. And we've never really had like video games or an anime. They've tried stuff now on Netflix. I don't know if it's gonna work. They tried making like a video game. It's okay. They had video games beforehand, but it was based on like playing like the physical card game.
Yeah.
Pokemon, you guys had an anime. You were an anime first, a really
Manga,
popular
anime.
manga, and then they made a card game off of it, similar to like Yu-Gi-Oh!
Game Boy, then card game.
Game Boy, then card game, right?
Yeah.
So you guys have had like a lot of sort of restrictions. Like there needs to be a Pikachu card. There needs to be a Blastoise card.
It doesn't
Like
have to be.
no, I mean come on. If there wasn't a Pikachu card, where would you be right now?
Yeah, but I mean like they reprint Pikachu a lot.
Yes.
They don't reprint Blastoise as much.
Sure.
They reprint Charizard, the ugly piece of crap, through its ass. But they do reprint, obviously, and they're obviously pulling at the nostalgia strings. Like, oh look, here's another Charizard, guys. You got to get this. Like, I mean, you see that big box over there. For those who can't see, I am pointing to a UPC. Pokemon released these.
What's the UPC?
It's behind these slab cards.
Oh, sure. Okay.
The big box.
Yeah.
So that is an ultra premium collection.
Okay.
Pokemon's like biggest premium product they've ever released. That was released for the 25th anniversary, right? Which has now become a little bit of a collector's item already.
Okay.
They have now released an ultra premium collection just for Charizard.
Wow.
It's Charizard branded.
Wow.
It gets custom Charizard cards.
So is Charizard more beloved than Pikachu by Pokemon players, you think?
I don't know. Chat, why don't you weigh in on that? But I think there are a substantial amount of Charizard lovers. I don't think anything can ever pass Pikachu because it's the one thing that all kids
Everyone knows a Pikachu. People don't even know, like, my girlfriend, like, loves Pikachu, but she can't name, like, the starting 3 Pokemon. So, like, from the original game, like, she can't name them at all. She doesn't know what they are. She doesn't even know there were 3 starting.
So Pikachu, I'd say, is very popular. Eevee is popular as well.
Eevee's damn cute, though.
Eevee is popular, and those are purely for the cute factors.
Yeah, those are cute.
Then, of course, Charizard and Blastoise are big. And then you get some of, like, the more odd ones, like Mew. Popular.
Yeah.
Lugia.
It's from the movies.
Or, like the legendary birds.
Yeah, that's
popular.
also, you guys have to work off, like, they release a movie, right? And then... Or a manga, I suppose, and the manga becomes like a movie, maybe, and then does it become a card game? Like, what's the stream?
No, it's just the card game is defined by the Pokédex in the game.
Okay.
So if there's new Pokemon, there's got to be cards for those new Pokemon.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, from a design perspective, like, do they have to make a Mew because their movie had a Mew? Like, the manga had a Mew, so the new set has a Mew?
No, not necessarily. Yeah. Look, the latest game had like origin forms of the legendaries. So like Palkia and Dialga in their like primal form, basically.
Alright.
And they released origin form versions of them in the card game. They don't always do it though. It's like sometimes yes, sometimes no. Like for example, if you go back to the very first movie, Mewtwo creates all the clones. They're all like dark versions of themselves. So Pokemon all those years ago released the Team Rocket set, which had dark Charizard, dark Blastoise. Like it had dark versions of the cards. So that was a very cool
flavor. They do get inspiration from
I mean, like, yeah, sure, of course.
But it's not like they don't have to.
So Vish says Pikachu is the anime's mascot. Charizard somehow became the TCG sort of mascot. Must collect card, but not in isolation though. I mean, there are some really expensive Lugia and Mewtwo cards. So
that sounds right.
There are some people who are niche collectors for certain things. There are people who collect the evolutions.
You love Blastoise, right?
I love Blastoise. I mean, I guess that speaks for itself. But I mean, some people collect all the evolutions, like all the different flavors of Eevee. There's like a guy in Cape Town who has almost completed a like pure master set, 3 copies of every Eevee card ever printed.
Wow!
Like, I mean, that's the most bonkers set I've ever seen in my life. Like,
it's so old and
I mean, like some of those cards are worth, like one of those cards are worth like $1,000.
Wow, that's
like
nuts.
And he needs 3 of them for his set, right?
Yeah, Magic collects. We don't like, even if people collect Magic. They'll like collect.
Oh, like be careful now. Okay, so let's just pause this whole thing. So Brendan says he loves Mimikyu, Evolutions, Dragonite, and Blastoise. If you didn't say Blastoise, I hate you. Fish loves Ninetales. I know he does. Mew's beautiful.
What are you saying about being careful now?
Like, I'm gonna say like, okay, but so here's this, right? So yes, that card may cost $1,000.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I will never play with that card. $999.
Very different.
You don't play with it. Let's talk about what's the most expensive card you own in Magic.
Now officially, I recently bought into a Gaia's Cradle.
How much does Gaia's Cradle cost?
Gaia's Cradle was a good 10k, so that was a pricey boy.
It's about $100, right? No, sorry.
10k, so that's well, exchange rate is weird now, but it's like $500.
$500, sorry.
Yeah, but mine was like a little bit damaged. Like you get better ones with a better nick, right?
So I mean, on average, like let's talk about like Mox Diamond is played.
Yeah.
Mox Diamond is like $650.
Yeah, it's like 10,000 rand.
So, right? You're going to play with that card.
Well,
I mean, people will proxy it.
Yes.
But it's a playable card.
Yes, no, it is playable. Although, for the most part, I think most sane Magic players, like people who don't like just have money
What
out the
about
wazoo.
duels? $750.
Yeah, they're really expensive and they're playable. But what tends to happen very often is that the people who have them didn't pay that much for them. They had them when they were
Like
back in the day, right? So they own these massive, ridiculously expensive collections because they were playing in 1994 when the cards had no value. Like they were scraping them on the floor, kind of thing, and no sleeves. Magic was the first TCG. We didn't have sleeves when people started playing, so people just played barehanded, shuffle, bare. It's gross. But what that means is a lot of people have very nostalgic sort of love for the cards, but they don't necessarily care that much for the financial value of the cards, even though the cards do have financial value. And I think for the most part, like nobody really owns, especially in South Africa, nobody owns like vintage decks. Nobody owns decks that have like 4 copies of every duel. And I mean, one of the most expensive cards that sees play in vintage is Mishra's Workshop. I think a Mishra's Workshop is like, I don't know when the last time I checked. I think it's like more than 20k each. I don't know what the number is. And you need 4 copies of it. So
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Pokemon, if you're talking about playable stuff,
yeah,
the most expensive card you're gonna find in standard is like very similar to Magic. Like a Shieldred is now like $60.
Yeah.
Pokemon probably. I mean, Arceus V-Star isn't even that much now.
I think all the TCGs
like $30-40
have a very
top.
similar like top level for what is expected for people to pay for a card that they're going to play in like the most recent format, from the most recent set. So if a card's being printed now, it's unlikely it's more than $50. And when it rotates, it drops down. The older stuff is on this reserve list. It's contentious, but basically when Wizard of the Coast reprinted Alpha and Beta and a couple other sets, so what happened was those sets were printed, but in very small amounts. They didn't know how popular Magic would get. Magic got very popular.
Yeah.
They kept printing more and more, and they would still like sell out, and people would be like, I want cards. And then eventually, years later, they tried to reprint like a bunch of stuff, and people got very upset because they've been collecting, and their market value tanked. And then Wizard of the Coast said they're going to make a reserve list. So now this is a list of cards that is basically unchanging, like it's unwavering, and they will not reprint these cards. They have said to the public they will not. And for some legal reason, that means that they can't. So they've sort of met into like an unwritten contract with people at large, you know, the consumer base, that they won't reprint those cards. And so these cards have just skyrocketed. And one of them is Gaia's Cradle. Mox Diamond is another example. Mox Diamond is a bit funny because they did actually reprint it, but then people got mad at them. So it's still on reserve list, speaking.
Yeah.
There's a few other examples. For the most part,
Lion's Eye Diamond.
Lion's Eye Diamond, reserve list. Wheel of Fortune, the Power 9...
of course, yeah,
loads of cards, reserve list.
I mean, there's some
and
cards
these reach prices. These reach insane prices.
Reserve list that don't climb, like the common cards on reserve list.
Yeah, there's a lot of cards on reserve list that are like worth less than the most recent rare. But it's still on the reserve list. So maybe one day it has its time in the sun.
I mean, a good thing here is like Vish says that imagine someone playing 4 copies of Moonbryon or Ray VMAX Alt Art. So to try and put that into perspective for you is that Pokemon has alt arts, and they are like the same rarity as
Mythics or
no. Like those things from Kaladesh and stuff.
Oh, like expeditions,
like
and
expeditions,
stuff.
like,
Invocations. So Magic only started doing like, it's really funny. For the longest time, Magic was really happy just printing normal cards at like common, uncommon, rare, mythic. So that what it basically means is like in every pack you will get 10 commons, 3 uncommons, or 4 uncommons, and a rare and a token card. That's like a normal. And then sometimes you'll get like a mythic. And for the most part, Magic was happy to print those cards in the normal versions plus foil. And so obviously the most expensive cards you get then was like a mythic with foil. And then maybe in the past, like, I don't know, decade and a half, we started to like touch into like the real blinged out stuff, right? For whales. As I presume you guys know about whales. Into whales. And we've slowly just escalated to the point now I think it's actually worse than other TCGs. So we will like flesh out like money for alt art foils directly from Wizard of the Coast. So not even putting them in a pack. You are now being like, I want these 10 cards in foil, and Wizard of the Coast will be like, give me a paycheck, I'll send them to you. Like, I'll ship them to you straight.
So
hot off the printing press.
And that's basically what it is that, so there are versions of playable cards that come out in this alternate art, trainer flavor art, and they are crazy pricey.
Okay.
And you do get some players who will play with those cards.
They'll pay like 4 copies
Same
of
as
the...
Magic.
Okay.
You get the guys who play with the Masterpiece Soul Ring and the Expedition Fetch
Everything's
lands,
foil in their deck, and everything's the most expensive version.
You get the Magpies.
They do.
So Pokemon has obviously got the same thing. All the cards are reverse holo, and everything is at the top rarity.
Do you guys... Are there... So we have the reserve list, which obviously these cards are very expensive. After that, we have like the expensive rares and mythics, like the ones that maybe see like longer play. But for the most part, I would say there is like a cap off to what is like... There is gatekeeping in a sense, like you have to have this much money to play, but you can also play at a far more reasonable rate. Like there's always a cheap deck basically in standard that's like, I don't know, $100.
You could build a standard deck in Pokemon for a decent price tag.
Okay.
Very easily, because Pokemon has actually tried to make the game more accessible by means of the same way that Magic brought out challenger decks and stuff.
Okay.
Except Pokemon's ones are where Magic's challenger decks, you almost gotta have to buy 2 to get a full deck.
For sure. Yeah.
Pokemon's are like 80 to 85% complete.
So you're just looking for like a couple
you can
singles.
Spend like $10 on singles and the deck is complete.
Wow. Okay.
So they've done an absolute brilliant job on doing that. And not to mention the fact that you get a code card inside the box that you can play online with it as well in its entirety, which Magic doesn't do for challenger decks.
We for a while they released decks with a code, and you could like enter the deck in and you get those cards, but not the new like immediately playable standard decks, which have been really funny, or pioneer decks. It's been very strange. Magic has like a lot of outcry about that. We're like, guys, can we drop the gatekeeping? Can we make cards more affordable? Because all cardboard is equal, right? It's all cardboard, so it's all artificial scarcity. They can put the price they want on it, and to have a better player, like to have a more enjoyable experience, it'll be really nice if, for the most part, if you could like enter into any format with $100, that would be great. I think that's a very good, like reasonable amount for a hobby. But we have older formats, and they can't always reprint the cards in older formats. And they have reserve list cards, and then I'll reprint those. So there are formats that are just expensive. One of them is CDH. That's very expensive, but yeah, they have a workaround of that, which is that they play proxies. I don't know if we can speak about proxies on this channel. Maybe that's
I mean, well,
that's contentious.
Guys do play proxies in Pokemon as well. But I mean, I just wanted to go back on your question. Is Magic has got... Well, sorry, Pokemon has got something Magic doesn't have with regards to the longevity or value of cards. So, standard cards are at its like highest for a while. Right?
This is Magic, right? Yeah.
No, Pokemon.
Pokemon, okay.
Right? And then it will take the post-standard dip.
Okay.
Right? And the dip will be substantial.
We're talking about like
10
times less.
50%, 75% less.
Okay, yeah.
It's substantial. Then what happens is, maybe after the next block is released, right? The next complete set. So we're talking like 4 or 5 sets down the line. Those cards start increasing in price because of people, the collector aspect starts kicking in. Pokemon has got a huge collector following. So, and I'm talking about cards where like it pains me that cards that I owned as a player back then are worth so much money now from a collector standpoint. But you got rid of them, right? Of course. Yeah. Because you got to try and sell them before the rotation is over so 100%. You can buy the next standard cards. So Pokemon has a way bigger collectible market than Magic does. You do get the Magic collectors out there.
For sure.
Like, I mean...
But they've actually decreased. I would say people have, for the most part, the Magic player base has fallen out of collecting, and we are far more in sort of the playable side of Magic now. With Commander being so popular, Magic cards that are expensive are being played. They are being put down on tables. That's why they're expensive, is because thousands of people want them.
Sure. I mean, that's why Magic has got a different flavor where you'll get like random commons and uncommons from ancient sets that are worth like bonkers money.
Or your uncommons and commons from the most recent set will actually creep up in price over time.
Yeah.
They'll stop printing them, and then this uncommon will be worth like 50 cents, and then $1, and then $2, and then $3, and they'll just keep creeping up.
Yeah.
And like, sometimes what really happens, which is pretty funny, is the card we printed into standard that standard doesn't care about at all, but older formats do. And then you'll crack open your pack, your standard pack as a new player, and you'll be like, oh, I don't want to play this. And someone will be like, oh my god, I can't believe you pulled that, bro. That's amazing. Because like some older format wants it, and the older format's willing to pay like $50 for it.
Yeah, it's...
So, because of the other cards in the card pool, right?
Like, I don't get that at all, but I mean... Yeah. That's where the games differ in its own sense. So I mean, just to go back to the question that I feel was slightly unanswered. So you said like if somebody wants to get into Commander, they should go down to LGS, maybe try and play with somebody else's deck.
Yeah.
And then if they were ready to commit and buy a product, what would you recommend?
So, ask a friend. Ask a friend if you can buy one of maybe their decks. Go to a local store, see if they have... We have precons. So this idea is like, because WotC doesn't own EDH, like they don't own the banners and stuff, but they have started making product for it. And they make regular product now. So it used to be that we only got Commander decks once a year. We now get them with basically every set.
Yeah.
So you can go through and you have choices. It's not like you have one deck. There are like maybe 3 or 4 decks usually. And because there are multiple sets, you maybe have maybe up to like 8, maybe if you're lucky, even like 12 options for Commander decks. Pick one of those precons maybe up, and then you go home, you go play it a little bit with friends, you see maybe there's some things you don't like about it, there's some things that can be better, they're always meant to be upgraded. Like, you can play them straight out of the box, but I would say nobody plays long-term and doesn't upgrade them unless they've agreed to do that.
Yeah.
So then players will go home, you go look up on EDH Rec, you go look up on our other building sites, Moxfield, Scryfall, you go find cards to add, you go pick up those singles, you trade for them, you build up a deck, and you start playing with that. The biggest issue with starting with Commander is there are certain cards you kind of just want to have. They're not even necessarily expensive, they come from a broad period of time, right? So if you want to play a green deck, you probably want a Rampant Growth, a Farseek, a Nature's Law, a 3 Visits, a Cultivate, a Kadamas, maybe you want Harmonize, Garrix, you want a whole bunch of like green cards, but they're not printed together. They've been printed over all of Magic's history. And so the easiest way to then pick up those cards is to trade or singles.
Yeah, for sure. Kyle, how much for one of your blinged out decks? I don't really have a blinged out Magic deck. Okay, well, I do.
You do. You have said this now.
I've got.
So Kyle started playing CDH recently. So how we spoke about earlier, how EDH is like this fun, free-for-all, casual,
which
not
I
play
still
to win.
have many of those.
CDH is, instead of having the rule zero conversation that we've come here to like play casually and have a good time, we've come to play a good time and win. We play to win.
Yeah.
We've come here and we're winning. We're winning this game and we're going to win it hardcore. Like we are going to play the most degenerate, strongest cards in Magic's history and we're going to thrash each other.
Yeah, there's no turn zero conversation. It's like
the turn zero conversation is that we're gonna play our strongest things we can.
It's basically, what table is this? This is the CDH table. Okay, boys. Like I'm not even making eye contact with you.
Yeah.
And afterwards, like I'm gonna do like that Fortnite thing where you start like
you got it. You got it.
But those decks can get really expensive.
Those decks can get really expensive because oftentimes they play these reserveless cards.
Yeah. So I think my Sithis deck's probably sitting at about.
It's ridiculous now.
It's probably like
Serious Sanctum in there.
20, 25.
You've got reserveless stuff inside there. Yeah,
it's going up.
It's going up.
I mean, I guess like Chatterfang's also about like 10 to 12k.
Yeah.
Perforus is 8 to 10k.
Ooh, yeah.
Like
I think I have a CDH deck. It's a cheap CDH deck. I think it's sitting at like $2k. So that is like 30k rand, right?
Cheap CDH.
It is a cheap It's a cheap CDH deck, and that's kind of funny. Like it's a cheap CDH deck because I'm not playing like cards I should be playing because I just can't get them. Like
so this is a cheap deck then.
Yeah. So
Staxies are like a cheap CDH.
Yeah. So if you wanted to play CDH, the strongest versions of like EDH decks, the biggest issue is you want to play duels. Duels are lands that have 2 types. They are fetchable because they have these types. So we spoke about earlier how Magic has 5 colors. Each of those colors is a type. Because of reasons, Magic's lands tend to have 1 type, but these types have 2. And they have no real disadvantage, and they can't reprint them. And they're played in every format they're legal in. So
and you're looking between $750 to $1,000 a
each.
land.
Yeah. And that's like the reasonable ones. Like those are the
Savannah, 750.
Yeah, and those are the cheapest versions of them, right? These are not the alpha or the betas of them. These are like the unlimited or revised. Yeah. We have ABUR, the first 4 sets. Alphas are the most expensive, obviously, and then it goes down as you go on.
Of course. So yeah, no, I don't have a deck to sell you, Vish. This is a very deep, dark rabbit hole to go down, so be careful. So yes, I think that's a great way to get into the game. What I'll do is, on the VOD that I upload to YouTube, I will put some links to some Commander tools like Scryfall, Moxfield, EDH Rec,
Tapped Out,
and I'll put some links to some product that we probably recommend.
Yeah. You can put links to some maybe brewers if you wanna.
Yeah.
Some other YouTube channels. There's a lot of dedicated channels to like gameplay, to building up decks to brewing, card evaluation, that kind of stuff.
Definitely. So I mean, like, it's a very early days. We still very much in discussion about it, but we are in talks.
We can do some deck techs.
Yeah, we're going to be starting up a separate channel for Magic related stuff. And we're very excited to get this going. It's been a couple of hurdles in the way, but we will be focusing on things like deck techs, maybe some like product recommendation, like, and obviously some gameplay as well. I mean,
can we shout out a channel here too, like a good directory?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
the most popular one is the Command Zone. They host a game called Game Nights. It features like oftentimes very popular celebrities or maybe like Magic influencers or content creators. They make very high quality gameplay. They've got like loads of staff working on it. Yeah, production value is like insane. So it's almost like watching a movie. They're an hour long usually. Watch a couple of those. You go through, start having a nice time, and when you find something you like, it doesn't matter what it is, I promise you, it's probably buildable at like any budget amount. I used to build budget decks for a local store. You could build those decks for 500 Rand, 600 Rand. And I honestly think that's a very fair price for the fact that they work, they function. You will be happy playing them.
Yeah. 100%.
You don't feel bad about it.
100%.
So while there are like 30,000 Rand decks, you can also play like 500 Rand decks. And I think those are good. Those are good.
People are like on my case. Like, this is not going to be my channel. This is going to be a group effort channel. This will always be my channel. And it will always be whatever the hell I want it to be about, but majority of the time Pokemon.
Yeah.
But this is something in the future, and of course I'm going to shout it out because I'm going to be involved in it. Going back to Seb's comment, I enjoy watching I Hate Your Deck.
I Hate Your Deck is very
good. I Hate
good.
Your Deck's great. I've started watching, I don't know if you've seen any episodes of Elder Dragon Hijinks.
No, sounds good.
It's with Olivia
Goldberg Hicks, okay.
And Alias.
Okay.
So they have a channel where they do EDH together. I love it.
For budget players, I used to really like Quest for the Jank Lord. They would have very like heavy stipulations on like prices they could play, or like prices of cards they could play, and that meant the games were like very enjoyable to watch. Plus, they've got like some hijinks, and it's like funny sometimes. So they were a really good channel to watch.
Yes. The 99's a good channel.
The 99's really good. MTG Mudster. They have so much content. They've been playing so much. Like they are just. There must be 1,000 episodes on that channel, I swear.
Probably. And then if you want to once you get into it, if you want to get into the bigger stuff, there's like Playing with Power.
Yeah.
That's where I started like
CDH TV, Play to Power, probably the best like CDH channels to watch. Yeah. Also Play to Win, also really good.
Play to Win, it's good too. So yeah, there's tons. I'll put a couple of recommendations in the VOD when it goes up, and I
would really not suggest trying to watch CDH content if you've never played Magic before.
100%.
It's very confusing. There's a lot of cards that have very particular abilities. You don't really get a feel for how like Magic will often be played. There's a lot of like 1 and 2 card combos. That's not something that's like too popular. There's a lot of tutoring, fast mana. Start with like the Command Zone.
It's definitely going to be the Command Zone. I like the fact that they also, with every pre-con release, they do pre-con upgrades.
They also explain their plays and the reasons they're doing it. They say like, I'm doing this for like why. Like, I'm doing this because player A was scary. You know, Kyle was scary, so I removed his commander and then I made him discard his hand and now he's sad. And then I'll cut to Kyle being like, well, I got my commander removed, so this is terrible for me. So it's really, it's good. It explains a lot.
And then I hope nobody plays the Dread Magistrate. Yes. Oh, look, somebody played the Dread Magistrate. I'm going to go home and cry now.
Yeah, there are cards in Magic Collection that no one likes playing against, but we all still play them. So.
Yeah, of course, because you have to be degenerate.
Yeah, you got to do the thing. So
you got to do it. But no. I think we've given people a great introduction to Magic.
Yeah,
and thank you so much for being here and sharing your Bible of knowledge. I can say this. I don't net deck Magic very often because you are my net deck.
Yeah, no. Like I said, I did a real deep dive into Magic. I know a lot of cards. I know a lot of formats. I know cards. It's weird.
I'll be like, I'm trying to build this deck and it's not working. Have you considered?
List of 50 things. Quickly search in the Marks field. Yeah,
it was. It's been a great adventure, and I think if anything, if I hope if this episode proves anything as well, is that Magic, with Commander being such a casual format, I also find that you get to make some really cool friends along the way as well. You get pods that you gravitate towards because these people play the kind of Magic you like to play.
For sure.
Get
your friends involved.
Yeah,
like, it's great. Get friends, have a drink, like, chill out.
Yeah, I've had some Pokemon friends playing Magic. Some of them have caught on very well. Others sit there and still till this day read the cards that they've owned this deck for like 2 years and they're still reading what the cards do. But it's just a lot of fun, and I just think it's a great way. Like, I've tried to build something similar in Pokemon. It's very difficult, but it's
a great game. It really is a beautiful game. Commander in particular.
Commander.
Yeah.
I think Magic in the rest of its entirety is quite can be very toxic.
It can be very challenging, very difficult. It can also be really punishing. Like, you feel really bad sometimes because you know where you made the mistake.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah.
The Commander's a lot of fun. Before we maybe cut off, I had a question for you, and maybe if you were to suggest maybe 2 Commanders somebody would go build, like, as a new player, because I know what mine are. Because these are the 2 that I used to build, like, very often, people with budget decks. Like, these are the big, like, decks that I used to enjoy a lot, and I would suggest to people. So 2 or 3, like, Commanders, what would you suggest?
Jelly Bean. It's the first one that comes to my mind.
That's Omnath, Locus of Rage.
Lands matter. So that's the first one that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
Omnath, Locus of Rage is a good one. And if I had to pick another, I'd probably say Starter Commander.
Yeah.
I haven't built it personally, but it seems like it's very easy to build. Maybe Zada.
Zada's really good. Zada's really good on a budget. That's Zada Hedron Grinder.
Yeah,
That's very good. It's mono red. You store much of stuff together. It's really good.
And very straightforward strategy.
Do you have maybe one more? I'm testing you now, Kyle. I really am. No? What's the deck you built recently that you really love, by the way? Maybe instead of a deck to go build, what's something you built recently that you love?
Like, I really love, like, to say...
Okay.
Like, I really love it a lot.
That's to say, Weatherlight Captain?
Yeah, with Shrine Tribal.
Tribal, yeah.
I love that a lot. It is a deck that I really enjoy playing because of the fact that, like, I did little to no net decking for that deck. Everything that I've put in there, I've kind of developed my own win cons.
Yes. That's land destruction.
But it's land destruction and I win.
And you win. It's very different.
It's not land destruction. Everybody sits with their arms folded and be like, "This is some BS." Like, no. Man, there's so many nice decks. But if I had
those are good ones. I like those.
Lands Matter is probably the easiest
Lands Matter green
strategy deck that you can get.
So Omnath, Locus of Rage, Zada Hidden Driver, and then you really like Sasay, Weatherlight Captain.
Yeah.
I would say I used to build a lot of these, like, for budget decks of people. It was Talrand Sky Summoner. It's mono blue. You play a bunch of cantrips, you make a bunch of blockers and attackers, you play counter spells. It's a nice way to start playing because blue's very strong in a budget. Nakia of the Old Ways, she, like, doubles your mana and says you can't cast non-creatures. So it's just big, stompy creatures and you have all the mana in the world. You just slap one thing after the other. And then I used to build a lot of partners. That's a bit of a cheat one, but, like, what you can do is a really great mechanic in Commander is you can go find some partners, and they basically say that they can be paired up with anything else with partner, and then you get loads of options. So maybe that's a good way for people to start if they wanted to. Is go see if you can pick up a bunch of the cheap partners and play those together and mix and match it. So just get your hand some bulk maybe and start mixing and matching with your friends with some partners. And you will find out pretty quickly what you like. Because the partners are pretty good, they're cheap, they're in all the colors. And the thing that's really great about them, they all have their own effects. They don't necessarily say I have to be played with another one, but they play together in very interesting ways. Like, we will play auras and we will attack. Or we will play lands and we will go big. And we will, like, control the sky and we will attack for triple damage. And so there's, like, lots of very interesting ways that they go together.
I think, like... Probably another easy deck build would be any Enchantress deck. Really.
Any Enchantress deck's really good. Any Artifacts deck's really good.
Sithis is great.
Joyra, Weatherlight Captain.
Joyra
very
is
good
fantastic, yeah.
artifact deck. Basically, every artifact you play just draws you another card.
Yeah.
So
that's a great.
You never run out of gas. You always have cards in hand.
There's so many good cards, so many easy decks to play.
EDH Rec, top commanders. Go pick one of those. Maybe skip the first like 2 lines. Like they're too popular. They're too popular for reasons as well.
Yes. And not good reasons.
Not good reasons, bad reasons.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But no, Shot for coming on.
It was a pleasure, Carl.
Appreciate
it was awesome. It was awesome.
And guys, if you haven't already, follow. Go check me out on all the other social medias. You can check me out on Facebook. Kahuna, Facebook.com/Kahuna Koala, Instagram @Kahuna Koala, Patreon.com/Kahuna Koala. If you'd like to support the channel in a more monetary way, and of course you right here on Twitch if you haven't already, hit follow, and I'll catch you guys next Tuesday, probably with a little bit of, I think I've actually got something special next Tuesday, so we'll do some pack opening gameplay. For those who know, they know what that's all about, so we'll get somebody here and do the thing where we crack open some packs. So thanks a lot, guys, keep safe, and we'll chat real soon. Cheers.